Japan is facing a serious labor shortage, which has led the country to open its doors to more foreign workers. The most common route has been via a system known as the Technical Intern Training Program.
Japan is entering a future where each generation is smaller than the last, permanently. While most nations treat shrinking population as collapse, Japan is trying something no major power has ever done: staying wealthy, stable, and strategically relevant even as nearly 1 million more people die than are born each year.
Records show Japan's population has dropped by almost 1 million people in a single year. It's a sign of deepening crisis as the country struggles to raise one of the lowest fertility rates in the world.
And that raises a question no superpower has answered. How do you project strength when manpower becomes scarce? Why Japan's birth rate collapsed? Work culture, marriage, and economic pressure. Most governments believe fertility can be nudged upward with subsidies, childcare benefits, or tax relief. Japan tried all of that for decades. It barely moved the needle. The issue isn't willingness to have children. The issue is architecture. Life is structured around work, not family. Marriage is still the gate to childbirth, but marriage is delayed because young people feel economically insecure. Wages stagnated for young men for almost 30 years. They worry they cannot support the expectations surrounding marriage. Women face a different pressure. If they have children, many workplaces expect total devotion to home or total devotion to the company, rarely both. The economic model that built Japan's prosperity made parenting irrational, not morally, but mathematically. You can raise a child, or you can survive corporate expectations. Very few can do both without burning out. Fertility is not a cultural failure. It is a systemic output of work culture, cost of living, and industrial expectations created decades ago. Policy tweaks can soften the edges, but they cannot rewrite the original bargain. Japan became rich by prioritizing work over free time. And when every hour of your life is spoken for, the most finite resource is not money. It is emotional bandwidth. Children require time, presence, and community. Japan optimized everything else. Japan's declining population. Population decline is usually seen as collapse, something that destroys GDP, weakens labor markets, and erodes national confidence. But Japan didn't collapse. It stayed rich. Cities remain safe and organized. Technology remains advanced. Its capital markets remain enormous. Its maritime alliances remain strategically critical. Japan peaked at over 128 million people, then began shrinking every year. The gap between deaths and births has reached almost 1 million annually. And yet, it is still a top manufacturer, a global investor, a technological powerhouse, and one of the most trusted U.S. allies. Japan did something no Western nation has done. It slipped into a future where growth is no longer the engine of strength. The model is no longer demographic expansion, but demographic equilibrium. Stable institutions, stable alliances, stable industries, even when the population shrinks. Economists once believed population was destiny, that every shrinking country must become weaker, less relevant, and less capable of shaping international outcomes. But Japan hasn't behaved that way. It has decoupled wealth from population. Japan is pioneering something entirely new, a post-growth superpower defined not by scale, but by systems, alliances, predictability, and technological depth. This is not a crisis. It is a transformation. Japan's military challenge. Can a shrinking nation prepare for conflict? Here is where demographics become geopolitics. Japan is rearming faster than at any time in modern history. Its security alliance with the United States is deepening. Its defense strategy now defines China, Russia, and North Korea as active threats. But the self-defense forces face a structural constraint. The pool of young recruits is shrinking. Hospitals, logistics, and elder care industries need the same young workers that the military needs. So every recruit is a competition between national security and domestic caregiving. Japan cannot field large conventional ground forces like the 20th century superpowers did. Manpower scarcity forces doctrine into a new form. Drones instead of soldiers. Long-range missiles instead of mass infantry. Maritime denial instead of territorial occupation. Software and surveillance instead of thousands of boots. If China's advantage is scale, population, industrial output, shipbuilding, Japan's advantage may become precision, automation, alliances, multi-domain integration, and systems that reduce dependence on bodies. Japan's demographic winter is shaping military doctrine, not from ideology, but from arithmetic. Power is being redefined, not as the ability to mobilize millions, but to deter conflict using precision, alliances, and technology. Japan's silver economy, aging technology as global soft power. If Japan cannot reverse aging, it can monetize it. The world's future is not youth, it is longevity. Europe, Korea, China, Singapore, and eventually the United States will all face the same demographic constraints. Japan is building the first industrial ecosystem optimized for aging. Caregiving robotics, medical monitoring systems, autonomous mobility devices, AI-assisted living, age-adaptive public design, and health infrastructure that reduces manpower demand. What looks like domestic decline becomes global expertise. Nations may one day depend on Japan for aging technology the same way they once depended on Japan for automobiles and electronics. Power is not only the ability to build ships or weapons, sometimes it is the ability to solve the future. Japan's immigration debate: identity versus economic survival. Mathematically, the easiest way to stabilize a shrinking nation is immigration. Japan knows this. Quietly, the number of foreign residents has reached historic highs. Skilled worker visas now allow longer stays, and some sectors quietly encourage permanent settlement. Economically, this is rational. Without immigrant labor, industries collapse, rural towns disappear, tax bases erode, pensions become unsustainable. But this touches something deeper than economics: Japan's identity as a highly cohesive nation. For the first time, a populist backlash emerged, arguing Japanese first, warning about cultural dilution, welfare strain, crime, or the erosion of homogeneity. The tension is emotional. Immigration solves the math, but changes the story. Japan is negotiating between two truths. Survival requires new people, and nationhood is built on shared cultural norms. Immigration becomes a national transformation, not a labor policy, a redefinition of who belongs, and how a shrinking great power preserves identity while integrating outsiders. Japan's urban future and strategic geography. As Japan's population shrinks, its geography begins to concentrate. The countryside is emptying, not because of cultural decline, but because cities provide what aging nations need: healthcare access, transportation efficiency, and predictable caregiving. Instead of thousands of small communities spread across remote regions, Japan is becoming a nation of major urban corridors: Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, Fukuoka. Concentration creates stability. Fewer hospitals can serve more elders. Public transit replaces private cars. Caregiving becomes scalable. But urban concentration also creates a new strategic reality. When rural areas lose people, territory is no longer monitored or sustained by local settlement. Infrastructure, agriculture, coastal awareness, and land stewardship will increasingly rely on technology, sensors, drones, and automated logistics, not population density. Japan's national resilience stops being about how many people live everywhere and becomes about how well remote regions are maintained without them. That means precision farming, unmanned coastal monitoring, automated cargo routes, and digital land mapping replacing the labor once supplied by rural families. Urbanization becomes more than demographic convenience. It becomes a strategic operating model. Dense cities for caregiving efficiency, automated systems for territorial continuity, and digital infrastructure replacing human presence. Japan isn't abandoning land. It is reorganizing national geography under demographic scarcity, prioritizing capability over headcount. East Asia's demographic cliff: how Japan became the future. Japan is not an outlier, it is simply ahead. South Korea's fertility has fallen lower than Japan's. China is aging at speed. Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore all share shrinking youth populations. East Asia defined the economic rise of the late 20th century. But its next defining feature will be demographic winter. And this reshapes geopolitics. Alliances become more valuable. Automation becomes security. Deterrence replaces dominance. And national strength becomes the art of working with fewer bodies. Japan's transformation, redefining power after population decline. Japan is not disappearing. It is transforming quietly, methodically, and without panic. What looks like decline is actually a preview of something every advanced society will face. A world where growth is no longer guaranteed, where manpower becomes a strategic resource, where identity must adapt, and where power is measured less by volume and more by resilience. Japan entered this future first, not because it failed, but because it succeeded, building long lives, economic stability, and institutions that outlast population swings. In history, nations competed by expanding territory, population, industry, and consumption. But the 21st century may reward something else: systems that remain strong even when numbers shrink. If Japan proves that prosperity, security, and national character can survive demographic winter, then it will write a new chapter in geopolitics, one where post-growth power is not weakness, but design. And perhaps that is the hidden lesson. The future is not young or old, rising or falling, expanding or retreating. It is adaptive. Japan is not the end of something. It is the beginning of a different definition of strength, one the world will soon have to learn.